All right, good evening, everybody. We will call this August 20th Charter Review Committee meeting to order. We have first on the agenda to appoint a vice chair and a secretary. Then we will overview the sunshine laws. They are a little complex in this case. We're going to go over our objectives for the charter review. We're going to give a little history review from our city clerk who's going to lead us through that. Then we will talk about the meeting schedule that the city manager came up with and was not very popular. So we'll see if we can find a meeting schedule that works a little bit better with everybody. And then finally, we'll get to two of the things we've actually called you guys together to look at, which is Article 1, General Provisions, and Article 10, Charter Amendments, before we adjourn. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as read? Motion. Okay, I have a motion from committee member, would that be the appropriate title? Committee member Naeem, and a second from committee member Walt. All right, any amendments to the agenda? Any conversation on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we need to appoint a vice chair and a secretary. I will do my best not to be absent. But in case something happens and I am, somebody needs to be able to run the meetings. As far as the secretary, our clerk is equally committed to being here at each meeting. She has probably, along with Mr. Walker, the most historical experience from Newberry going through this process. And she is great at taking minutes. So I might suggest that we nominate Ms. Judy to be the minute taker and the note taker, the secretary, if that is amenable to everybody, and then I'm open to suggestions on a vice chair. Anybody have a nominee or willing to act as? Well, she'll be I was suggesting for the secretary. I'm not sure she can be the vice chair as an employee. I think she can take minutes for us and record the history of it, but we need a vice chair.
I'll motion for Judy to be a secretary.
You make a motion for Judy to be the secretary?
I'm making a motion for Naeem to be vice chair and Ms. Judy to be secretary.
All right, so I have a motion from member Naeem to be welcome, come on in. We're just getting started to be the secretary, and a second for that motion for Ms. Judy to be the secretary. All those in favor?
Yes, Mayor, before
Yes.
we do that, the suggestion of bylaws that we made as an amendment was for you not to vote. It had
I did not
only
vote?
voting in the event of
Right.
a tie. But we just said since there's 7 members and 1 alternate, basically on this, just avoid you voting in any instance, so it doesn't take away your ability to be not governed by the sunshine.
And I didn't vote that last time, right? I was quiet.
Right.
I had 6.
You had 6, and now Ms. Gale's here.
And now that Ms. Gale is here, then Wall is not a non-voting.
That's right. Walt is our alternate.
As an alternate, and I'm
That's right.
in for Jim.
For
So you will be, okay.
Okay, so Ms. Gale, we are on the second point of the agenda. We have a motion on the floor to appoint Ms. Judy as the secretary that has been properly seconded. Any conversation about Ms. Judy being the secretary? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. And I had a motion on the floor for Naeem to be the vice chair. Do I hear a second for that motion? I have a second from member Mark. Any discussion on that motion?
Naeem, are you good with it?
Yes, sir.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you. And I'm going to turn the third item on the agenda over to Rich or Scott, who's going to explain the sunshine law. I know you guys were all in the audience. We made some decisions at the end to go back and appoint me as chair, and there were sunshine reasons for that based on the history of what we had done before. So I'll let Scott take that part away and kind of explain what you guys have agreed to do, and we certainly appreciate what you agreed to do, but there are some sunshine regulations that we all now have to adhere to by being on this board. Mr. Walker, do you need?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Did I need you guys to please share the microphone when you're speaking?
Can you hear me now? Amy, good, okay. There is an attachment in your materials that looks like it's 317 pages long. And if you want us to go through that in detail, we will do that, but, and we won't do that. And I'm gonna give you some, I'm gonna give you very simple rules to live by and boil this down into a very simple idea. And hopefully that will allow you to not run afoul of the Sunshine Law. So that's what I'm going to do. These kind of cases are very, very fact dependent, and so that's why you have all these listed articles. And what the Government and the Sunshine Manual is a collection of Attorney General opinions that have been rendered by our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, as to instances where people get themselves into problems, or there's an opinion rendered by the Attorney General that there wasn't a problem. So that's what all of these materials, and if you want to look at it, can't sleep one night, set it by the bedstand and start reading it, you're welcome to do it. The other point that I'd like to make for you is call myself or Rich. And if we can't answer the question pretty readily, then we're going to be looking at these kind of opinions and see what fact pattern most closely fits into whatever situation that you're presenting for us to try to give you some advice. And so we're responsive to you all, and we want you to use us as a resource. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I can't call the city attorney's office, I can't bother them with some, that's not what we want you to do. We want you to call us and say, all right, we've got a problem here, because if we can be on the front end of something, it helps on the back end. It doesn't cost anybody a dime to go up to the Ethics Commission and file something against you. So you're taking on responsibilities, and you have certain rights to be on this board, and we, like the mayor said, we very much appreciate you doing that and providing your public service. But as you'll see in the bylaws, you don't get paid for this service. And so, and the last thing we want is you to have something going on up in Tallahassee that we've got to deal with, because that just causes you all a lot of consternation, and we are the same way. So let me give you a couple of general rules under the Sunshine Law, and if you stay on this side of what I'm talking about, chances are you're not going to have a problem. Now, one of the things we talk about is conflict of interest. What presents a conflict of interest? And I gotta say, it's hard for me to come up with a scenario with you all being on an advisory panel on charter review, a scenario that would inure to your own private gain. But that's basically what a conflict of interest is that if you have some sort of a relationship, or you have something that is going to bring you monetary or fiscal gain, or it's going to help your wife, or it's going to help somebody within an immediate family, essentially, brother, sister, daughter, son, wife, dad, mom, that kind of immediate family, then if it inures to your private gain or one of those members, you can't vote on it. And you have to file an 8B voting conflict of interest with Ms. Judy. Judy collects those, and then you don't vote on something. I have a personal gain that might come as a result of this, and therefore I'm going to not vote. I'm going to abstain from voting. That's if it results in a conflict of interest. Like I say, on the way over here, I was trying to think, okay, what would present a conflict of interest for one of you all? And it's really hard for me to come up with something that is a conflict of interest. If I, just stretching it, if you were married to Judy and you said, okay, I'm going to create a situation where it changes her responsibilities as a charter officer, then somehow maybe that could be construed as you know, my wife get benefited by my work on the Charter Review Commission. But I mean, it's something like that. You'd have to have something really wild factually to even worry about it. So I don't think you're gonna have to worry about that part of it, in the gist of what we do here. Now, let's just talk about the sunshine law and what that means. When two members of the city council, our commissioners, get together and they talk about, hey, we've got this thing coming up, next meeting, and we're gonna vote, I'm voting this way, how about if you vote that? Our mayor has the luxury, and there's an attorney general opinion directly on point on this, that he is not a voting member of the commission. So he's really kind of outside the membership of the commission. Separately elected. It's not like he's a commissioner and then they vote him and he still retains a vote like some cities do. He is a separately elected individual that is in charge of the parliamentary procedure and how the meetings go forward and that sort of thing, but he doesn't have a vote. He doesn't have the ability. Now, interestingly, he can refuse to sign an ordinance, or refuse to sign a resolution, then after a prescribed period of time, the commission can vote it in anyway. So he's really, in a lot of ways, don't mean to demean you, he's a bit powerless. He doesn't have power. He's a figurehead in that way. Now,
Just like it.
but he does a lot, he has a lot of influence. He's a kind of, it's kind of a throwover from years gone by. Our city mayor was also our city manager, because a lot of years we didn't have a manager. And so when Grady Hartzog came on and he was our official city manager, then Freddie Warmack stepped aside and Grady took on all the powers per our charter back then of what goes on in the management of the city government. But now, for so many years now, we've had a city manager. The mayor really has more ability to perhaps corral the commissioners. He can't take a poll and a vote. He can't go in and say, hey, Commissioner Martin's gonna vote this way, so why don't you vote this way? You know, that's impermissible for him to do that kind of thing. But he can go to each commissioner and have a private conversation about issues, and it really facilitates our way of government. And my recommendation when we get to that part about the powers of the mayor, since we're a city of the size we are right now, and it works, it's a good function for us to have a mayor that has the ability to do that. Then, you know, I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a preview of what we're going to talk about when we talk about the powers of the mayor, because we're going to get there. And I'll give you an example of that. When we had the Gatorbuck situation, it was a hot issue in front of the city commission. You had the people in the blue shirts and the people in the red shirts, and the people in the blue shirts weren't talking with the people in the red shirts. So it was kind of a big problem, and it's one of those controversies, unlike a lot of times of what we see. Our mayor was able to go in and talk to the blue shirts, and talk to the red shirts, and start finding out what were the issues there. And I think it happened over Labor Day weekend. And so it was really kind of a remarkable thing. And lo and behold, the people were not as far apart as we thought they were. And so he just kept on, you know, with a big ball and knotted string together, pull this string out, and then the next string and the next string, and we were able to get an agreement, and the controversy went away. So we like having a mayor that has the ability to do those kind of things and work together and find out from this commissioner, well, my issue is really this. And okay, well, let me go work on that. Let me see if I can go fix that. That's a very effective thing, at least for right now with the charter as it sits. Now, maybe in 10 years, we'll have another charter. I'll still be here. I've been here long enough. And all my young kids that I've got, I'll still be around, I hope, if you all have it. But, and maybe we'll find we're a big enough city that doesn't work anymore for us. But that's, you know, that's a precursor down the road. We'll see how that works. But getting back to the Sunshine Law, if you see Monty Farnsworth and Commissioner Martin together at the DQ up here, and they're sitting and talking, and they talk about how's the wife doing? Great, wonderful. How's your job going? Great, you know, blah, 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 blah. You can talk about those things. You all can meet, and advisory boards are the same way, believe it or not, because you're advising to the commission to make a vote. So the law says that even as sitting as an advisory board, you're subject to the sunshine, which is why we've done a notice of the meeting. Here's the requisites of sunshine. You've gotta call a public meeting. And that's why we post it. We post it in conspicuous places. So Judy puts it up on the bulletin board. There's a meeting of the charter review, so our citizenry can be here. If they wanna be here and they're interested in, then they have the right to be here. So posted notice is one of the sunshine law prerequisites. Second thing is that we have to be at a public meeting. We have to be here where everybody can participate. And it needs to be in a place where it's ADA compatible. In other words, we had an invite up in High Springs. They said, look, above the great outdoors, there's a meeting hall up there. They said, we would like to have a appreciation meeting for, and we call a workshop up there for the city commission up there. And we'd just like to do it out of the gratitude. And it sounded like a great idea, but you know what? They don't have an elevator, got a stairwell, and it wasn't ADA compliant. As nice as that gesture was, we couldn't do it. You know, we had to say, sorry, thank you, but no thank you. We can't have a meeting there at the commission. It's not permissible. So it's got to be ADA compliant, a public meeting of where you can. Third requirement is it's got to have minutes. You already took care of that. You said Miss Judy is going to take the minutes. If she's not here, she's going to notify somebody, and then we'll have a backup minute taker. One of the good things about the way the city runs is that's never a problem. We always have minutes. We always have the ability to protect you on those kind of situations. So those are the main three requirements, and guess what? City staff is going to pretty much take care of those three, so you don't have to worry about that. But what you can't do is go down to the country kitchen and meet with each other and say, Walt and Mark, just to pick on you two for right now, hey, how are you going to vote on the mayor powers? How are you going to vote on the commission powers? How are you going to vote on the city attorney? If you start talking about things like that you're ultimately going to vote on, then that's impermissible, and that's where you get into problems. I've had the wildest things happen in my career, things that you just don't think will happen. And I'll give you an example. There was a commissioner that was having a problem. His wife had gotten cancer. And it's sorry to say this happens in our society, but his wife had cancer, and he was lifelong friends with the mayor. Been to school together ever since kindergarten. And you know, these people were now in their late 60s. They really care for each other. They've been lifelong friends. And she went up to him and said, I heard that your wife is diagnosed with cancer. I'm bringing by dinner. I'm so sorry. I will make sure anything you need, just let me know, and that kind of thing. And a lady came up, and you know, we call them gadflies. You know, they're kind of people that just are looking for trouble on things and looking for trouble where trouble isn't. And she had put a recorder down. You know, her. It wasn't a phone back then, it was a little mini recorder. And she, aha, got you. I have the, you know, it's right here on the recorder. I know you all were talking about, and in that case, the mayor had a vote in that city. It's a different city in this. And I got you. And so first thing that ran across my mind is you're not authorized to take that recording because it's, you know, you have to have consent of the parties before you do a two-party recording. But as long as it's in a public place, you can't rely on it. You know, there has to be an expectation of privacy. And so the recording was all muffled. You couldn't really hear what was going on. So then she tried to say that the commissioner and the mayor were talking about city business. She overheard it and all that kind of thing. And that wasn't the case either. And they signed affidavits that that was not the case. But my point of that kind of, and of course that bunch of nonsense went nowhere because it was nonsense. And it was just, it really exemplified to me and this is in a small town, how these things have just gotten to the point where neighbors do this to other neighbors. And that's a whole nother story. But you know what? We have the Sunshine Law. Ruben Askew put it into motion way back in the 70s. It's not going anywhere. We're the strongest sunshine state there is in the nation. And it's here to, you know, we can bellyache about it all we want. It is what it is, and we just have to go forward with it and govern ourselves accordingly. My point to all that story was that even in the context of at the country kitchen, there's no expectation of privacy, and you know, if that crosses your mind, then be mindful of the fact that you could be recorded potentially, even surreptitiously in a place where there's no expectation of privacy, and it could present a problem if we got that. So, and we don't wanna be dealing with those kind of things up at the Ethics Commission. And things can happen inadvertently, really inadvertent. You go up to us, hey, you know, I have a question about that. That didn't seem to make any sense to me, and it's an issue that you're gonna be voting on somebody over. Here's you talking about it. So inadvertently it can happen. And what I recommend to the commissioners, planning and zoning board members, this body, our code enforcement board, those are and really any advisory board that the city has, somebody comes up to you and starts talking about those things. No, I'm not, we can't talk about this. Just put that person on. Sorry, you know, I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but we can't talk about it. And walk away, you know, and just stop the conversation right there. And that way, you know, you don't get subjected to sunshine law violations. And it can happen very innocuously and very easily after a meeting. You know, you're doing the pleasantries that we do as humans and interacting with each other, and the mic might still be on, and you talk about, hey, you know, I don't know that maybe we need to give power to the mayor. You know, you know, it can just it can really happen very innocuously, so don't.
I just got excited.
Yeah. Once he bangs the gavel and says it's over, it's over. And doesn't mean you can't go down to Woodyard and have a drink afterwards with everybody, but if it comes up, then nope, we're not gonna talk about it. That's how this works.
Scott,
Go ahead, Walt.
I think I've asked you this before, you know, for the planning and zoning, but if a citizen were to engage us in conversation regarding something that we may have coming in front of us, are we allowed to engage them?
Absolutely, and it's expected that you do that. And in fact, in our quasi-judicial proceedings, we have that provision that talks about ex parte hearings because the case law and the legislature said it's really expected for citizens to come up to you and say, hey, we got the red and blue folks that are really at odds at each other, and they're gonna lobby you, and they're gonna say, well, here's why I can't be at the meeting, but you know what, I'm against this gatorback going down here for these reasons, traffic, whatever it is, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a bit expected for you to do that. Now, your other point that kind of leads to, and I know you've at least in the past been active on social media, it is not a violation for you to post things on social. I'm a member of the Charter Review Advisory Board, and these are the issues we're dealing with. And in fact, part of the reason for your being in this instance is because we want you to politic out to the people that are in the citizenry, because it's going to come to a vote. So if we do this all in I'm going to jump ahead again for just a second. To do a charter amendment, you don't have to actually engage a charter review advisory board. The commission can pass a ordinance and say put it on the ballot. 10% of the registered voters in the last election can petition to have an amendment put on to the ballot. So you don't really need a charter review advisory board. It's not absolutely necessary. One of the reasons for you to do this is so that you can have interactions with your citizenry and say, look, this is why we're doing what it is and we think this is important. We went through a charter review up in High Springs a couple of years back, and the charter review came back and said, you know what, we don't see anything that needs to be changed. We're just, you know, you could do it if you want to, but there's really not a reason to charge, and that could be your decision. That could be it. Now, and you could take that, you could have a majority opinion, a minority opinion. You could take that to the commission, and the commission says, all right, good enough. We engaged you. We'll see you in 10 years. Stick around. But, you know, if there's changes, then we want to be able to advocate to our citizenry. Now, if you post something and you say this is what we're doing on powers of the city or powers of the mayor or powers of the city clerk, whatever that is, that let's just say you posted that. Jessica cannot in turn start communicating with you. The fault becomes with Jessica, okay? So that's, and again, you gotta be real careful because it's real easy to innocuously, you know, you're 20 replies down, and if you see something, you can just write on it real easily, and that's where the problem is. Now you can be communicating with one of the members of your board, so you want to avoid that. Now, whether it could be in fact a violation, I don't know. You know, it's got to be specific enough as to a matter that you're going to vote on, and you're trying to sway the other members' opinion on this. You know, so it's got to have some additional things going on. But the best thing I could tell you is just, you know, if you see something posted on under our example that Walt's posted, don't comment on it, don't correspond, especially in writing. Emails.
Even liking could be construed as a.
That's right, that's right. Social media, you know, we're not just talking Facebook, we're talking text messages, emails, any form of electronic communication is the same as, and the bad part about it is that in our society right now, there's a trail. I mean, and if whatever you post, let me give you another point that's important for us, which is whatever you post, you gotta preserve and send it to Miss Judy. Miss Judy is our public officer on this. Now, she's got people that help her in the city, but on sunshine law, public records requests, that it funnels through Miss Judy. That's how it works. So if anybody does put anything on social media, text, or whatever, you gotta preserve it, send it to Judy, because she's the keeper of those records. It's one of her responsibilities.
Also, on that note, if we're taking notes
Great.
while we're here together,
Great point.
you wanna make sure you preserve those, or at the end of the meeting, give those notes to Miss Judy as well. So,
That's exactly right.
So is sunshine law going forward from this meeting on?
Yes.
As we're being aware, okay.
That's right. That's
Okay.
exactly right. So, and exactly as stated,
Just
your
making
notes are
sure.
part of it. Now, there's a cure that can happen, it's called Toller cure, because, there's a case in Ray Toller, versus, I think it was Seminole School Board, and, in that case, they had made, the committee had done a lot of things outside the sunshine, and they had not kept adequate records. So there's a way to go in and have a public meeting, which is done, you know, as a publicly, and you have to have deliberations that are not just a rubber stamping of what the committee did. So as long as you do that, have a debate, full debate, look at whatever the committee recommended, and then have a vote on that. It's called a Toller cure. So there's a way to cure it, which is nice to be, you know, on the city side, because there's things you can do to fix it. But again, we would prefer not to have to go to that extent.
I have a question.
I have a question about.
Sure.
You're saying stuff to preserve to give to Miss Judy, is that just between us, like if I had texted Naeem about something?
No,
or is
it's
that with any
anything,
citizen?
anything you do.
Anything regarding this that I speak
Bonnie,
with
if
anyone about?
you,
Okay.
if you're engaged in Facebook or text messaging or that kind of thing, and it relates to what it is that we're dealing with here, then that's part of it. Now, if I'm texting my wife and saying, hey, eggs and bread and bananas and all, that is
Right.
not, that was like the commissioner that came up and said, I understand that your wife, or it's the mayor that came up to the commissioner and said, I understand your wife has been diagnosed with cancer, you let me know what I can do. That's outside, that's not public business.
Okay.
I don't,
That's really pretty much everything, Mayor, that if you stay on those simple things, two you together, that's a problem, okay?
All right, I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I want to make sure we move through, but this is really, it's, it's not important until someone makes a mistake, and then it becomes very, very important. So long and short, until this process is done, try your best just not to communicate with anybody on the dais.
I'm cutting all
Unless you have
ties
to.
there.
Right. I'm a non-voting chair on this, so if you have questions that you want to talk to me about, you can communicate with me because I don't have a vote. Okay.
Y'all just don't come to the country kitchen, cause Scott made that clear.
Right. And Martin likes to talk loud when he's at Country Kitchen. He'll introduce you to everybody that's there. Okay, so again, if you have a question, I'm not trying to rush us from that topic.
No.
Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the objectives because Scott did he mentioned them. You know, we went through a charter review about 10 years ago. And that was the charter review where we segued from a mayor who was running the town as a city manager to a professional manager and a mayor that had fewer powers. I'm sorry, my throat is dry. But, and I would say that the commission's main objective in this charter review is that we left a foot in both fields in this charter. So I'll give you a perfect example we'll probably come back to. In one part of the charter, it says that the mayor has emergency power. So if the commission declares a state of emergency, which we did during Hurricane Irma, or was it Irma? The mayor has dictatorial powers over the police chief, which we do not have. So I have dictatorial powers. Now, clearly, that's sort of a layover from when the mayor was running the city. That person would 100% better be the city manager at this point. And another part of our charter, I think it kind of insinuates that it is a city manager, so that we have some contradictions that we need to clean up. You're not going to hurt my feelings or the commission's feelings, because I believe that the city manager model is a professional model. I think you can look at the recent successes we've had in the past few years at growing the city and running the city and say that that's the case. So it is my intention that we clean up the charter and make it real clear. I'm perfectly fine with having ceremonial roles and duties. I think that's the best. You got 5 voting commissioners that make the decisions. You have a mayor to run the meeting and handle the ceremonial stuff, and you got a manager that is here 40 hours a week, more like 60 hours a week with how much we ask from him, and that's a good call. So that is in no way to diminish any of you from bringing up any issue with the charter that you'd like to discuss, you'd like to bring to the board members. But the general consensus at this point is that what we'd really like to do is make sure that we get a lot of the legalese, no offense, Mr. Attorney, out of the charter. We make some things a little bit easier, some things the state mandates, and then we have a different mandate in our charter, so poor Miss Judy has to do things twice, one to meet our statute and one to meet state statute. We'd like to clean that up. If the state's going to rule anyway, might as well just whatever the state says. You know, we'll do whatever the state says. Ms. Bonnie?
How would we know what the state is saying needs to be
That's
done?
gonna be our job.
That's going to be their
So y'all
job.
are doing that part of it, okay.
They will come to us section by section and say, these are some ways we can trim this down. Trim the fat off to make it clearer, make it more concise. Some of you weren't at the meeting where the woman from the League of Cities came up. I'm forgetting her name, but she said, you know, it's possible to have a charter that's 9 pages, 8 pages. And it simply says, you know, this will be decided by ordinance. One of the things that we want to think about kind of philosophically is, you know, we're going to have a charter review about every 10 years. And if it's in the charter, we have to live by it. So if it's something that may change over time, that may be something that we want to say that's going to be handled by ordinance. But that's where Ms. Judy will come in and help us guide through certain sections. Legal will guide us through certain sections. And they'll present it very objectively. These are our suggestions, and these are the pros and cons why we would. Now, again, if any of the board members say, you know what, I really want to look at this. You know, I've been watching city government for a long time. I think this should be in the charter. Bring it. It's very helpful if you could either call me and say you want it on the agenda with a little bit of time ahead of it so I can get staff to work on some backup material, or call legal's office or let Ms. Judy know. You don't have to run everything through me, but sometimes I'm a little more accessible than if Scott's in court. You know, it's hard for him to answer the phone that day. And I have no problem, you know, answering questions and helping organize that kind of stuff. So that's sort of in concept the objective of what we want to do. We want to go back through the charter. We want to get everything lined up with a city manager style. We want to make it real clear that we're not contradicting ourselves in any part of it. And then anything beyond that, I think, is kind of icing on the cake. Because it's, you know, this is a pretty expensive process. It's time consuming for you guys. we want to get it right for the next 10 years. And I would say that's probably why the commission is not asking for big changes, because we did a huge change the last time in that shift, and it seems to be working. So now it's kind of tweak time at this point. Maybe 10 years from now, it'll be time for another big shift. Are there any questions about the objectives? If anybody has something on their mind that they'd really like this board to look at, and it's kind of a deep question, it's gonna take staff some time to research, you know, feel free to bring it up now. If you wanna sleep on it, bring it up at the next meeting, that's fine as well.
Okay.
Mark?
So, as we go forth from this day forward, and when we come to this meeting, Scott, you're gonna be here every time,
I'm over here every time, or Rich will be.
or Rich. So we will always have
Always have legal.
legal that we can bounce some of this stuff off of immediately. So, okay.
Anybody else? Okay, with that, I've asked Ms. Judy to kind of give us a little bit of history, and we might have stepped on a lot of her toes by this point with that. But if you could, Ms. Judy, give us some of the history of what we've done before.
Okay, just want to let you know that the committees before you met to review the charter in, I went back to 1972. So 1972, 1998, 1999, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2005, and 2009. Thank you. In 1972, ordinance 0872 was passed, but we do not have record of the ballot results. We have that it passed, but was not able to locate the voting numbers on that. In 2001, ordinance 1301 failed. The commission discussed major revisions, and they were not separated on the ballot, and there was they just could not get the support needed for that to pass. In 2002, ordinance 1202 passed. It was minor revisions only. 2006, ordinance 2306 failed, and it failed because of term length. And we had minor revisions as well, and they were separated, trying to get that passed, but it failed. In 2009, which is the mayor referred to, was ordinance 0609. It passed, but it was minor revisions only. We did not place a term length on that. And I think that is, as you know, well, I guess I should say that the original charter may have been prepared by Otzi Fagan, and I went back, I don't know how many years to find that.
He was the founder of our firm. It was, and then
Ozzy.
he was the, city attorney for the city of Gainesville, and then, eventually became the circuit judge. So
Okay.
that's where our roots start with it.
Was that the 1971 revision, do you think, or before that?
Yeah, I think he was
Before?
there before that.
Oh, wow. Okay, and former Mayor John Glanzer was presiding at the time of the most recent charter revision in 2009. As you know, the current charter is a council-manager form, and the government and corporate authority is vested in a mayor and city commission of 5 members. And that's about it.
Thank you, Ms. Judy. It's an interesting kind of looking back to see when they passed, when they didn't pass, why they passed, why they didn't pass. And we can, if there's specific questions that you guys want to put forth, like term links, there is a way we can get into it. Maybe not this meeting, we'll hold it off, but there is a way that you can ask those sort of separately on the ballot so that it doesn't all get voted down at one time.
And I brought a sample of that. I think that I provided that to everyone.
I think so.
Question from Ms.
Naeem.
Mayor. One thing could turn down the whole charter review vote. Is that, am I listening to that?
It
correctly?
is, but it is possible, if we think that one item is controversial, we can kind of pull that and make a separate question
Okay.
on it, so
Make
that
a
it
separate
wouldn't,
vote.
right.
I just wanted to clear it, saying that like we went through all this trouble, got things changed, and then one
And
thing
then one
just
reason,
shoots
right.
everything down.
I'm voting against it because I like it at 2-year terms and not
Right.
3, that kind of a thing. So if you guys want to put that on, you can put it sort of as a separate question, let people vote on the charter, let people vote on that. That way, all this work wouldn't be for naught, just on one question that's, kind of controversial.
It was,
People
this,
have different feelings.
this was one of the things. This is a ballot.
Maybe we can make some copies of that for people, for the next meeting, or if we can do it right after the meeting, that's
Yeah, I
fine
mean,
too.
we're gonna meet 9 times and then all of a sudden all our hard work goes down the.
Right, right. And, and Scott alluded to this, but really and truly, the reason that I think this is such a superior way of going about it than just the commission kind of unilaterally is we got all of you guys, y'all, every single person on this board represents a different subsection of Newberry. You have friends, you have acquaintances, people are gonna ask you questions, they're gonna read about this in the paper, they're gonna read about it on social media, and you can educate, you can get the word out. They're gonna say, why are y'all doing this? And you say, well, let me tell you, we had this meeting and we listened for 20 minutes on this point, and we got the background, and we got the history, and generally there's almost always more to the story if you listen to the rest of the story, and that's kind of what we really, more than anything, we need your help, we need your leadership, but we need you out in the public helping spread the education, that there is a rhyme to the reason, there's a reason to the rhyme. We're not just doing things flippantly. It's because we've listened to legal, we've listened to their advice, and they've guided us. We've listened to our clerk. She's given us the history. We understand what was done, what needs to be done. Are there any questions about that? And thank you, Miss Amy. In your backup material, you have some bylaws, and I'm gonna ask Rich to take us through that section real quickly before we move on to the schedule. But if you got your calendar on your phones or in a pocket, however you do it, if you could have that ready for us to kind of look at as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, as you're flipping through your documents, trying to find the bylaws, what I'm going to direct you to is actually a new set that Miss Amy helped us copy and pass out just before the meeting started. So hopefully it would actually be the set that would have been sitting right on top of everything. And just to make sure we're all looking at the same thing, if you look at section 1 towards the bottom, Article 3, section 1, it's going to be the version, page 1, it's going to be the version that says the committee shall consist of 7 citizen members instead of 5.
May I pause for a second?
Sure.
So we have a draft and then the one with the seal on it.
The one with the seal is the one that we're talking
Just
about.
making sure how the-
Yes, good. That's an easy way to tell them apart. So Scott and I actually met today before the meeting to go through the bylaws, and I'm not sure if the genesis of these bylaws are from our last advisory committee, but we both felt that they were very well done. For starters, they're only 3 pages long, which is helpful. So that's a good starting point. But what we did is just kind of go through it and make what we think are actually fairly minor suggested changes. And that first one that I mentioned is in Article 3 regarding membership. One of the things we did was just take the resolution that was passed at the July 23rd meeting and make sure that the bylaws conform with that resolution. So as far as the committee, it's supposed to consist of 7 citizen members and 1 alternate member, which is Walt, according to the resolution. And then we specified that instead of a city commissioner, it would actually be the mayor who will serve on the advisory board. And then section 2, the mayor is sort of designated as the liaison to the city commission. And then, let's see, if you go to the second page, the only thing, couple things we added in there, Article 4 regarding the officers, we clarified, and again, this comes straight from the resolution too, that the mayor shall serve as the chairperson of the committee. And of course, we, you might recall at the beginning of the meeting, elected a vice chair and a secretary, Naeem and Judy, to fill those roles. So the chair is actually already established by the resolution. So we removed chair and indicated that the vice chair and secretary are the elected members for purposes of today. And then the section 2 duties of the officers, let's see, we caught one, well, there was a reference to the cemetery committee, so we changed that to charter review committee. And then, let's see, maybe shall not. Yeah, this is also where we clarify that the mayor shall not vote at all for purposes of these meetings. Then, let's see, the third page, Article 5 regarding meetings. We're suggesting that we make it a little bit easier to call a special meeting. If there's ever some kind of unique circumstance that comes up over the next few months, and that would be called by the chair or by a member of the committee with 48 hours notice. And then in terms of a quorum, since we have seven members plus the alternate, we increase the quorum to 4 regular voting members. Those were just our suggestions, subject to anybody else's thoughts on those.
Okay, do we need a motion to approve the bylaws?
We do.
Okay, are there any questions about the bylaws? Take a moment to read.
Motion to approve as written.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
from member Boyer, a second from member Naeem. See, everybody's kind of taking a moment to look through them. Any last questions? All those in favor of the bylaw signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so we had a meeting schedule sent out to us. It's extremely complex to get this many people together on a time where you can get this many people together. I think that we ended up on this Monday because you got the 2 commission meeting Mondays, you have the planning and zoning Monday, so this just kind of fills out the month of Mondays. We are meeting at 7 o'clock so that we don't have any members who have issues with other boards that they sit on that meet at 6. And so let's start, I guess, with this as our date and make sure that this Monday at 7 p.m. is a good Monday for everybody to meet, and then we can kind of go through and talk about the different items that we might want to look at and discuss. Madam Clerk?
Chair Marlowe, I will not be able to attend October 15th.
October 15th, okay. Can you make a note of that in your minutes, and we'll make sure that Amy has somebody to help run the machines back there, or somebody up here to take the minutes for us. Okay? Everybody good with meeting on this Monday at 7 p.m.? Okay. Well, if you would take a minute to just look through this meeting schedule, and I would, as you look through it, I would simply comment that the meeting schedule is sort of a balance of the committee members' needs and staff members' needs. So we need to get through these items, but we also need to give staff time to do the research and the history to make sure that they're bringing you good backup material. If they put good information in front of you, you guys will make good decisions. If we rush them and they put bad information in front of you, you guys are going to make bad decisions. So, and our staff is very, very honest about telling you that question that sounds really simple that came to you is actually going to take me a week or 2 to research and get you a good answer to. So I know it may feel like, hey, we can knock this stuff out, quicker. that's probably more for staff's time than it is for our time. You guys can probably make decisions pretty quick, read through the backup material, and 90% of it's probably gonna seem pretty obvious, you know, which way we should go. Some of it's gonna take a little bit more. So, and again, if you've got an issue that really drove you to wanna serve on this board, you could look at this proposed schedule and say, you know what, that issue really pertains to general provisions, you know? And that's, I'll bring it up that meeting, or I'll let the mayor know, or I'll let staff know that I wanna bring it up that meeting, that kind of a thing. So with all that being said, Ms. Bonnie?
Well, the only date that really sticks out to me that may not be good is, November 19th. That's the Monday before Thanksgiving. So I don't know if people are going out of town or.
Yeah, does anybody have their Thanksgiving holiday plans already scheduled? You know, we have 9 things that we know that we need to talk about. We may come up with more as we go through, but we're really it's more important that we do this right than we do this fast. So if we need to skip that meeting because people are out, you know, the commission still has yet to determine whether this is gonna be put on an April date when we're already doing elections, or whether we're gonna, and it's looking more like it'll be in the summer sometime anyway, just because of our timing. So, you know, with that knowledge, you know, if we need to miss a month here or there, it's not the end of the world. So, and we kind of planned to miss the holiday seasons. I think we're trying to squeeze one right in there before Thanksgiving. Is anybody besides Ms. Bonnie not gonna be able to make November 19th? Everybody else looks good? So we'll need, Miss Judy, will you put it in the minutes that November 19th, we're gonna need Janine probably to run the AV, so that you can continue to take the notes. Okay, so what about the January 19th, third Monday is a national holiday, Martin Luther King? Generally, what the commission does is try to move to the Tuesday to keep the same schedule going. Am I reading that right, that January 19th is MLK? Okay, so what do we think about, what's the Tuesday after that date? Is it 20th? I didn't have it
Yeah,
dated.
January 21st is Martin Luther King Day.
January 21st, so it'd be
It's Martin Luther King Day.
22nd would be the proposal?
I'm thinking the 22nd would be a good day for that meeting, Tuesday.
Yeah. If you need to move it, move it. Just say
Okay.
what it is, move.
Yeah, let's,
All right.
I would say the 22nd, and then, like Mark, that's a great, when we get closer, we come to the December meeting and say, hey, January 22nd is not a good day.
Yeah.
That's the time to bring it up.
Okay, so we'll put it for January 22nd, and then February 19th. You want to try the 19th to move it away from President's Day, or do you guys want to come and meet on President's Day? It's a good holiday to buy a car, I hear.
I say we roll
You want to leave it on the?
Does staff work?
Oh, staff does work that day?
Then why
Oh.
don't we just keep?
Leave it on the
on.
18th.
Leave it that
On
day.
the 18th.
Okay, okay. So we've got our dates to everyone's
Okay.
satisfaction. Again, this can be fluid if 3 or 4 members
You have
say
March
something.
17th, and that's a Sunday.
March 17th.
Okay, so we're gonna change March 18th?
I can't do 18th.
No, March
Can't
17th.
do 18th.
Yeah, March 17th I have as a Sunday.
March 17th is Sunday.
Well, I would if it's just one board member, I would say leave it.
Right.
And,
We would still need to change to the 18th.
yeah, we need to change it to the 18th.
Yeah, we're
but-
gonna be here Sunday the 17th.
Yeah. So we'll leave that. Are you looking at your calendar, Naeem? You checking out the rest of them? So the March is gonna be March 18th.
March 18th, yeah, fine.
We have an alternate member, so if one person's
Right.
out, Madam Clerk.
We just can't have both of you out.
Is that the day before, after the election, or,
Yeah. In my memory, we had skipped April because everyone's gonna be crazy in April. So I thought we had skipped April, we did skip December. So looks like we're down one in the November 19th, we're down one in the March 18th meeting. I would recommend we we skip April because I think staff is gonna be crazy in April. So let's do the next one to be May 20th. And
Um,
then, yep,
Point on May 20th, are we able to celebrate my birthday at the same time?
absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
Well, it might even bring you a cookie.
That'd be a good one.
So are we in agreement with skipping April 15th? Okay, so we'll skip April old business to May 20th, and then after May, it would be the June 17th
June 17th
would be the new May 20th.
would be the new 9th meeting.
Right. So the new 9th meeting would be June 17th, and that meeting we would be old business, recap of all articles, commission recommendations.
Okay, now that actually is not the new ninth meeting.
That's not the new 9th meeting?
Did you cancel?
We canceled the April 15th.
April 15th.
Oh, maybe one. You didn't cancel that.
We did not cancel the November, we just have one person out for that so far, maybe. And if it turns into more folks, just communicate with us. We understand it's holidays, family time, that's first. Hunting season, very important.
We have to at least have a quorum of 4.
Right. And, generally, I think, we can roll with 1 or 2 people being out, but if we're gonna miss 3 or 4, it's probably better just to reschedule so everybody can be here and those kinds of things. So if we know about it in advance, then we could do that. Does anybody have any glaring discrepancies in the way that the subjects have been laid out for you, that you had a chance to reflect on? We can certainly come back to it at the next meeting when you've had time to kind of go through and think about the charter and think about the way it's been broken down by articles to
Okay.
focus on. Member Clark?
Yeah, let me just, I've said this before, we're all sitting here, I hope we can all read and pretty smart people, educated.
Periodically.
I don't understand, why are we 1 and 10 instead of just rolling right through it? And as a committee, laying things out, looking at each thing, discussing it among us, among the group, and then if there is a problem, coming back to Scott or Rich and, just rolling right through the provisions, why
So
are
about
we
doing it-
skipping around so much?
Well, my answer to why we're skipping around is because different staff members are having to do the preparations for different pieces, and they're also doing other things. So, for instance, when we get to finances and budgetary thing, we don't want to put that one in the middle of September and October, because that's when we have to finalize that budget. So we want to free up his schedule there. Some of these, I think, have some rollover and some blending. So some of the issues are similar. So they allow the staff members to research sort of similar concepts. So they don't move chronologically through the charter in a logical order, and that's why we're not moving forward in the committee in a logical order, would be my response.
That's a good explanation, I got it, okay.
But it's your board,
No,
that's
well-
my answer. But if you guys would rather do 1, 2, it just may need 3, 4.
So let me ask this real quick. Maybe I'm just totally confused with this staff stuff. As we roll through here, we as a committee are gonna go through and read and do exactly as you requested. We're gonna look at things that may be outdated, may need to be readjusted based on the power of the city. But as we go through it, as we all come together, what are we putting on the staff unless we have some big change in here?
I think that my expectations of staff is that they're gonna bring proposed changes to you. So you're gonna read you're gonna read Article 2 and Article 5 by the next time.
Right.
And maybe you have some questions and you call Scott about it, or,
Sure.
right? But they're gonna bring forth to you, if this is the change you wanna see, this is the language that would look like. If you wanna see this change, that's the language that you wanna look like. And that's why it kinda takes some time, because they gotta put it in the legalese.
Well,
So
yeah.
we wanna say, go through Article 2 and take out any contradictions with any other article. And so it's not our job to go through Article 2 and every other article and look for
Yes.
contradiction. They're gonna say, okay, we changed this word because in Article 8, it says something else.
Okay.
So, if they mess up, it's their fault.
I mean, I can live with it, I'm just not used to this type of,
Well, the way
Sure.
I look at it is they're looking ahead also, so they're almost being as
Proactive
proactive
as
as
they
they
can be?
can and
Okay.
trying to anticipate things that could already be handled before we even walk in the door.
Okay.
Is how I'm,
Right, and
So-
you guys will get that language ahead of time, so you'll have the charter as it stands, you'll have some proposed changes, you'll look at it, and then what we'll spend our time in is saying, well,
do it
this
better and
word is problematic, this word could be interpreted this
Okay.
way. Cause you know, a different group of people did this last time.
Yep.
And some things get slipped through the cracks, you know, you got two parts of the charter, one gives the power to the mayor, one gives the power to the manager, so that's why I'm being facetious when I say it's the staff's fault, cause we'll double check them too.
I'm good, I'm good.
Yeah, okay. So, but that's kind of, and I wouldn't say that I understand exactly why these have been put in order, but I know there was some thought to putting them together from different staff members saying this one and this one go together.
Okay.
All right,
It does free up their time to do city work
yeah,
when the particular, like Dallas, you know, he's not tied up on making a presentation for us when he should be doing the budget,
right.
so.
okay. Okay. So, look through the schedule, you know, and if you've got something in particular you wanna focus on, try to figure out which meeting it would best fall under and bring it to our attention. We'll get some background information, and it may just be background information and we give it to you and you digest it. It may be background information and some suggestions. Okay, and with that, we'll finally get into our first articles that staff is gonna lead us through. And I believe legal is gonna lead us through Article 1 and 10, or is Ms. Judy taking, okay. All right.
Well, both of these are pretty easy ones for you, and we actually did an amendment on this, and it's shortened up this provision in the charter substantially. And just for your background, there's a chapter in the Florida statutes called 166, and that's what really governs municipal procedures, how we pass ordinances, how we pass resolutions. It's the legislature, the state of Florida. They have all these different chapters that are the statutes, and the one that pertains to municipalities by far and away the most under our general way of operating a city is chapter 166. And the first part of the statute is 166.011, and it says this will be known as the Municipal Home Rule Powers Act. So in the olden days, in order to operate a city, you had a charter that was passed by the legislature, and the charter gave you those powers. So if it wasn't in the old charter, back when O.C. Fagan did this many years ago, this section was very, very long. The city shall have the right to pass bonds, and shall have the right to have industrial bonds, shall have the right to pass general revenue bonds, on and on and on and on. The bond section was 2 pages long. And the reason for that was that unless it was in that provision, the grant from legislature, you did not have the right to do that. So what the legislature did is says, this is kind of crazy the way we're doing it. Let's create a statutory provision, the Home Rule Powers Act, which means City of Newberry gets to run City of Newberry. County of Alachua does not get to run City of Newberry, except in some little minor instances of if there's an environmental act, because the charter of the county says if it has an environmental application, the county charter has the right to supersede the city. So in those instances, the county actually does have authority over the city and those kind of things. Now, the next provision that's real important is 166.021, and that talks about if it's granted to you under the state constitution, Article 8, Section 2B of the state of Florida Constitution, then the municipality shall have all the governmental, corporate, and proprietary powers to enable them to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services, and may exercise any power for municipal purposes except when expressly prohibited by law. And then Section 4 is much longer, but I'm just going to paraphrase it. provisions of this section shall be so construed as to secure for the municipalities a broad exercise of the home rule powers. So basically what that's saying is we're not restrictive in the way that we give you your powers. We're expansive, the broad construction. So city, you can conduct any kind of, if you wanna run electric utility, you got the right to run electric. If you wanna do water, sewer, all that, it's governed under that provision of the statute. So now our charter only has to say, we exercise any rights that we have under the home rule powers. So this is one of those changes that happened in the times that Judy was talking about in history. And basically, we have the right to govern ourselves under the home rule powers of the state of Florida. And if you look at the state law reference, it says Florida statute right at the bottom of the section 1, the footnote. It says municipal charter and charter amendments, Florida statute section 166.021, etc. That's what I was just reading you from, that says the broad right of powers. So really, we don't need to, that's one of those areas that we don't need to really tinker with. You know, we could probably clean it up a little bit more language-wise, but it's pretty good as it sits right now. It references the state of Florida home rule powers, and so we're pretty much good on that one. And that's what I would tell you as far as and other cities that we've looked at, such as, I'll just read you this one from Bay Harbor Islands. The municipal corporation known as Town of Bay Harbor Islands, City of Newberry is the way we would say it, is hereby confirmed and continued pursuant to this charter, the Constitution of the state of Florida, the state, the home rules of the county as well. So we're the home rule powers of the city of Newberry, but that's it. So it can be very brief. It doesn't have to be in detail, but we're okay with the way it says right there in our existing charter on this particular issue. So that's really everything on home rule powers, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any questions on the general provisions? Article 1. Everybody have any notes that they brought forth? No?
That's what I'm saying, some of this is.
Straightforward.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Does anyone want to entertain a motion to approve Article 1 with no changes?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mark to move it forward with no changes, a second from Jessica to move it forward with no changes. Any final comments on Article 1? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And then I believe it's going to be Scott again for Article 10.
Can I
You
ask a
will-
quick question?
absolutely.
About that before? So like, over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of, bills that have been entertained in the Florida legislature about restricting home rule power. Would that be something that, depending obviously on which one they passed or didn't pass, that could be amended in our charters to still grant a municipality those powers that the state has changed?
If the state enacts some legislative change where they restrict the abilities of the city to do that under 166, we're pretty well stuck with it. So there's constantly a tension between the legislature and our Florida League of Cities, which is really our lobbying group. And whenever they go into some area that is affecting the city's ability to govern themselves, then home rule powers is the word that you hear a lot of. And Jessica, let me give you an example of that. And it really doesn't matter how you fall on it. I'm actually one of the attorneys that's fighting the issue right now to keep the GRU amendment on the ballot, okay? And some people say that is affecting the home rule powers of the city of Gainesville. And they can make an intelligent argument that by putting this on the ballot, it's going to restrict the city of Gainesville from operating its municipal utility, because we're establishing a board that's gonna manage GRU, which funds them millions of dollars and to transfer the utility to the general fund on an annualized basis. So the argument is that we're restricting their home rule powers. My contra argument to that is, now, wait a minute, we're not restricting the citizens of the city of Gainesville at all. If they decide they wanna be governed by a board that runs GRU, then we're, in my view, empowering, you can tell we're side of mind, but we're empowering the citizens to vote in a way that says, wait a minute, we're taking the governance from the city commission, which, by the way, is trying to raise the rates, again, even in the midst of the vote, which to me is a bit surprising, but that's what they've decided to do. And we're saying, put it on the ballot, let the citizens in Gainesville decide what they want to do. There could be nothing more akin to home rule power than allowing the citizenry in your city to do what it is they're going to do. So there's you hear that bannered around a lot, oh, this is affecting our home rule powers. And many times you got to boil it down and get into where the argument is and say, okay, is this really a home rule powers issue, or somebody saying something that sounds like home rule power but really isn't? And so, you'll hear both sides of the coin like that issue, but I favor our side of the argument at least. And so far we won in court, and it's going to be, looks like it's going to be on the ballot. We'll see what happens. But state governs, county then governs us in some limited instances, like environmental. That's why you have a county hazmat program that runs, anything associated with hazardous materials in the county of Alachua has been delegated by the state to Alachua County, and that's why they have the right to come in and govern us in those kind of situations.
That makes it more clear, because I know with the League of Cities, like last year, there were like, I don't know, 8 or 9, but they were all explicitly, we're removing this from 166, the statute. It was, this might affect our home rule, this might, so.
Yeah, that's the, there's an argument there. And most of the time, I'm gonna side with the League of Cities. In this instance, on GRU, I believe it's a citizen of the city of Gainesville that has the right. The other, next, Mr. Mayor, are you ready to go next one? The next one is another real easy one. Our existing provision charter amendments, it's section 53 and 54. I think we can actually, we can blend 53 and 54 together, and which says that and 55. So I'm gonna read you just real quickly these 3 amendments. Amendment by legislative act and voter approval. The provisions of the charter or amendments thereto, including repeal or abolishment of any or all of the parts and establishment of an entirely new charter, may be amended by the same process of legislative enactment and voter approval followed in the establishment of this charter. And then the charter provisions and amendments may also be amended, or the new charter established by adoption of the city commission of the appropriate amendment ordinance or ordinances and approval of the same by the voters of the city in election held in the same manner following approval of this charter. It is intended all methods to be adopted in ordinances, including initiative and mandatory provisions, shall be applicable for the adoption or amendment of the ordinances. And then the last section on that is when the election is held for approval of an amendment, amendments, or new charter amendments, ordinances, the city commission shall have said election advertised in the same manner followed advertising election for approval of this charter. So that's a lot of words to get to this point, and let me tell you what the point is. We talked about it when we first started the meeting. You can have an amendment by 10% of your voters the last election, or the city commission can and this is under that chapter 166, city commission can pass an ordinance and put it right on the ballot. Those are the 2 ways that you can do it pursuant to the chapter 166. So it's real clear under chapter 166. So these 3 provisions are saying the same thing with a lot of verbiage. So now let me tell you, let me show you where some of the other cities, the presentation that was made by the League of Cities, it's these charters that have been more recently enacted. And this one was done November 6th of 2012 by the town of Bay Harbor Islands. And here's what their amendment of the charter provision says. Section 701, this charter may be altered or amended at any time in accordance with this charter and the laws of the state of Florida, period. It's real simple. It encompasses what the statutory provisions are, and you can amend it pursuant to 166. So it shortens it up. It just makes it very easy.
So you just took 2 pages and converted it into.
That's right.
Basically,
Exactly.
That sounds
not even a
amazing.
paragraph.
And I can, and this is why, you made the point earlier, the 8 pages, this is why you can trim this down substantially, doing no harm to the home rule powers by just saying, this charter can be amended pursuant to the state law. And you're good. That's what you can do. So, and I can go through a bunch of other charters, but
We
none-
like,
I like
that.
one sentence.
I like it.
Scott, do we have to, would it be advisable maybe to put the state statute in there or attach the state statute so
It's a good
somebody
idea,
reviewing
Walt.
it can at least go to something?
when it's, typically what happens now, it doesn't look like it happened in this particular Bay Harbor Islands, but usually what happens is Municode, which does all of our assimilation of these and puts it online, and also puts it on, in a book form. Miss Judy cares for the books, you know, if you wanna see what an ordinance is or charter provision is, they'll do a state law reference right there and say pursuant to section 166 point such and such, here's a reference to that provision.
I think taking out a lot of the details that we're giving them in the current charter and then shortening it down like that, you know, we should give them a direction to look to see, okay, well, this is what they're referring to.
well, what this board can always do is make the motion that staff brings back the exact verbiage that has been discussed to the next meeting. So that instead of voting specifically on Article 10 tonight and approving it based on what we've read off, staff can take the comments that have been made, the suggestion by legal, bring that back to us at the next meeting, and it would be, you can read over the backup material, and it could be an up or down vote, or you say, well, I don't like this word, or I don't like that word, and then we can move forward from there. So we've got the suggestion by legal.
Is legal done?
Legal's done, and to buttress what the mayor just said, if you look at your September 17th, articles of the way we're gonna conduct business is Article 1 and Article 10, so then I'll have it coming back to you.
I make a motion that,
I had a question to Scott real quick.
Yeah, wait.
Can,
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't wanna
I
throw
hear-
out a motion
yeah.
without clearing something real quick with you.
Go ahead.
From here on, if we shorten things, my fear, and I think that's respectable of everybody, is can this be left open into different interpretation then?
No,
Because
this-
I can understand why some things are lengthy, because they don't want any kind of other interpretation of that law, or whatever is being reviewed. So by shortening it, does that leave us vulnerable for someone else to come in and interpret that something completely different than what we were
So
delegating?
what Walt suggested, and I made a note, you know, state law reference, section 166.031, and I mean, this is 166.031, so it says very specifically what you can do and what you can't do with regard to charter amendments. And so all of your length
Will
and
be it.
specificity is in right here. So you don't really have state law reference in your charter, you just note to it, because you don't wanna have, because what if the legislature changes 166.031 and puts it into 166.041, then you've got a mess in your charter. So you just do a reference to it, say, this is why we did what it gives you the map on how to do that.
And this, and Neve, I'm with you. this particular section
Yeah.
is really a lot of
Yeah.
legal jargon about
But,
voting and when
yeah.
and where, and the state tells you when and where and how to do it, so.
Yeah, it was
I think
just my
there's some
fear,
other
like
things
going
we're gonna have
forward,
to-
when we get into other deeper
Yes,
issues or whatnot,
yes,
if by shortening anything, will
yes,
that
I'm with you.
leave us in danger of leaving things up to interpretation
Yeah.
for years to
If
come?
it is, if it
He's
does.
right
You
here.
better know.
We're gonna say, wait a
Don't
minute,
do
we
that.
should be more
Okay.
specific.
Leave it alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are unique to Newberry that you may say, you know what, it's all well and good in the state, but we want some more specificity here, is what we're looking for. And that's you all's right to do that.
Thank you. Sorry, Walt, I didn't mean to.
Oh, that's okay. Any other,
All right, any other comments or questions for legal before we entertain a motion? All right. Walt, would you like to make a motion?
I would, I make a motion that staff put together something for our next meeting, regarding the shortened version that,
For Article 10?
for Article 10, the shortened version that, legal read to us with the addition of the state statute attached.
Okay, I have a motion,
Second.
and I have a second from Member Gale. Any further questions or comments on the motion on the floor? All those in favor signify by saying aye. I'm going to include, because I think it's polite, before we adjourn, just a member comment section. So we'll get it on the agenda properly next time, but if we could just go down, just a chance for anybody to say, you don't have to say a comment, but if you had something you wanted to say, Jessica,
I don't have any comment.
Mr. Gale, Mr. Walt,
Can I pump my business?
no. Mr.
It's the
Naeem,
summer.
Mark, Mark,
Just thanks to everyone.
Ms. Bonnie.
Okay.
I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your life to come and do this. My students all the time, they say, Mr. Marlowe, isn't it cool to be the mayor? And I say, absolutely. It's really, really cool, but it's also a whole lot of meetings. So I know what you're going through. I appreciate you being here. And I should have mentioned at the very beginning, our city manager, Mike New, he will be in attendance here. We split duties. There's a meet and greet for a neighboring congressman that we need to lobby for some things in Newberry, so he's handling that, but he will normally be here. I like this setup here. I think it allows everybody to kind of spread out, but it might be easier if we're on the dais. We could fit us up there, Miss Judy here, and then put one table for legal to talk to us, something to think about. I know that Miss Amy's probably struggled getting everybody's voice recorded, and if we're up there, everybody has a microphone that they can speak into, so just something to kind of think about that we might be able to, but it does limit us because then we can't kind of spread out the way we are right here, but something to kind of ponder on as we move forward with this. And legal, do you have any final comments?
Objective is get you out of here before 8:30.
Objective?
Meeting adjourned.
Wonderful. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. And thank you, staff, for setting all this up for us.